Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Andrea Thomas, and I'm the Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Studies here at the David Eccles School of Business. And we're grateful that you are here, and we're super excited to welcome your students or your children to be our students in the Business Scholars Program. We know that this is a challenging year, and I know many of you have dropped your kids off to housing, and so we're just very excited. We've got a lot of great plans for them. We've learned how to be very flexible over the summer as we've planned, replanned, changed plans, but we're very connected to our resources on the campus here, and we are planning a safe and really awesome experience for them this school year. So we've got a bit of a presentation to start, and we'll go through that, and that'll give you a lot of information. It's essentially what we're taking them through in our orientation that we have with them tomorrow. And so we wanted you to know those things as well. And then we have an opportunity for you to ask questions to us as well. And the way that you're going to ask questions is there's a Q&A button below that you can type in your questions. And then I'll be monitoring those questions and answering some of them by typing you back, and some of them we'll answer at the very end in the Q&A session. So before we get started in introducing the team, I'm very excited to have Taylor Randall, our Dean of the Eccles School of Business, on. And so I'm going to give him a few minutes to welcome you and say hello. So thank you, Taylor.
Hey, thanks, Andrea. And I want to welcome all of you to the Eccles School family. We're excited to see all of you. We have spent a considerable amount of time planning for this academic year. We're certainly hoping that it comes off in a smooth but different way. We are asking all of our students and faculty and staff and parents to be patient. I think we're going to learn a lot of empathy for each other during this school year, but it promises to be a unique experience for all of us. I've been thrilled to death at the reaction, especially from our faculty and staff, at the innovations that they are coming up with to be able to engage our students, in particular our freshman students. I think you'll hear a number of those innovations today. I know I have signed up to do bike rides with students, to go on hikes with students. If anybody likes to golf, I'll be happy to golf with students, and simply just sit around and have discussions. So we're going to have a lot more interaction on a personal level than perhaps you'd even see in a regular semester. I want to just describe for you, I heard a really interesting kind of story the other day, and I'm hoping this is kind of what our semester results in. Many of you may be jazz piano fans. I sort of am. But anyway, there's a gentleman by the name of Keith Jarrett, famous jazz pianist, and in 1975, he showed up in Cologne, Germany to give a concert. When he showed up at the concert hall, the piano was old. The upper octaves of the piano did not work. The piano was too small. It did not resonate, and he was furious. None of the conditions were right to have a good concert. The young woman who was organizing it tried her best to try and fix the piano in the hall, to no avail. And so at the end of the day, she looked at him and said, "Just please give this concert." And he said, "Okay, I will." He started the concert and realized he had to change everything. He kept his rhythms within a certain octave specification. At some point, because it wasn't resonating enough, he started pounding on the piano. If you listen to the tape, by the way, he wanted this concert taped as an example of the horrid things that could happen if you didn't have the concert hall set up properly. So if you listen to the tape, you can hear him literally pounding the piano and just groaning to try to get the sound out of it. Long story short, the 1975 Cologne concert became his best-selling album. Why? Because he worked with some constraints. He kept the melodies in octaves and tones that people enjoyed. There was more emotion. It all just worked perfectly. And in fact, it became one of the best selling jazz piano albums of all time. That is what we're hoping out of this fall. It is not perfect. We do not have the right or the instruments we're used to, but we have incredible improvisation. And I think what made that concert work is Keith Jarrett knew his trade. And I think we've got faculty and staff that know their trade. They are doing their best to come up with creative ways to engage students and teach them well. But also, Keith Jarrett had an excited audience. And we're hoping that your students are all also excited and patient. But it's going to be a great fall. And I am certainly very, very excited to meet all of your students and hope to see you as well. Usually this is in person, and sorry we can't be there to see each other and shake hands in person. Anyway, with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Andrea.
Okay, thanks so much, Taylor. So what we're going to do, I'm going to introduce the staff, and then we're going to present the information that we have, and I'm jotting down questions. As you type questions into the Q&A, it gives us the opportunity to either type back an answer or answer them live. So if you don't get an answer back quickly, that's because that's a question that I think that multiple people will want the answer to, and so I've jotted that down as something that I'll answer live at the end in the Q&A period. So we have a great team of business scholars, directors and managers and coordinators who help us put this all together. Business Scholars is an experiential program, and we promise to deliver an experience to your students. We're having to do it a little bit different this year, but we still have plans to deliver every single thing that we want to. We've just had to move some things around, and we'll be very carefully monitoring the COVID-19 situation. One of the benefits of being at the University of Utah is that we have an extremely strong Utah health system, and we've got physicians who are in all of the meetings with the university president. We've got centers. The business school has the policy center, the Gardner Policy Institute, that's advising the governor in the state of Utah. And then we have beautiful outdoor spaces that we can utilize on campus and around campus. And so we've adjusted a lot of things under the advice of the university to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe and that we're still able to offer an experience. Taylor alluded to one of the programs that is brand new this year. We're calling it Eccles Engagement. And what this is a place that alumni, staff, faculty, and administration are putting events on, either virtual or in person, with the dean or golfing with the dean. We've got an alumni who lives in New York who's going to a session on what it's like to work in Wall Street via Zoom. And so all of this, and that's all on eccles.links. A lot more information, but that's just giving you an example of some of the ways that we're engaging everybody this year in the Eccles School. So I want to introduce our directors and staff for the Business Scholars Program. Elena Williamson is responsible for admissions, and she works with Sarah Krass-Hilla and Emily Saunders to help on all things admissions, scholarships, and I think that your children probably know them pretty well by now. Bonita Austin is our Director of Academics, and so she'll be presenting what our core plans look like. She put together all of the canvas and a lot of the. Mandy Hamilstrom is our director over program, and she works with Natalie Boudreau, Caitlin Eichers, and Lauren Dumke to deliver those the programs. So they do all the coordination and the details, the backpacks that your children will be getting tomorrow. Those types of things are all done through that group. We also work very closely with faculty and with the student organizations and other staff throughout the Eccles School. Business Scholars is a really important program for us. It's how we get incoming freshmen really engaged engaged in the business school. And so if you have any questions about the Eccles School, whether it relates to business scholars or not, feel free to type those in the Q&A, and I can get as many of those answered as possible. If I don't get to your questions at the end, I'll give you an email address that you can email anything that we weren't able to get to. So I'm going to turn it over to Elena right now, and she's going to take you through some of the awesome things that we have planned.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elena Williamson. I'd like to say that I am now pro at all of this online technology, but one thing that you should know is we are in constant communication with each other, and I had Mandy send me the link to this meeting. Apparently it shows my name, or her name, excuse me, as my name. So I will fix that in a second, but I'm happy to be with you. My name is Elena Williamson, like I said, and I am the Director of Admissions. So we've chatted with a lot of your students multiple times to get them to this point, and we're very excited to welcome them tomorrow for our student orientation as well. So I'm going to go through just a few slides with you. First off, our agenda today, I'll talk to you a little bit about the vision of the program and where we have started from and where we're at now, as well as the overview of what your students will be doing this year, the schedule, and then some requirements and resources will be done by other directors, and the Q&A session like Andrea said. So the vision of the program, and credit to Taylor Randall and also Buzz Welch and Scott Schaefer, they got together, gosh, 8 years ago or so now, and talked about what could be done better or differently to give students an introduction to business and get them prepared for a major and a career in the business world. And one thing that had happened a lot in the past at Utah, but also at other schools still continues to happen, is that students are sent to a business school and told to take prerequisite classes. They go into halls under normal, non-COVID circumstances with 200, 300 students and take pre-business courses. And then by the time they're in their end of sophomore, first of junior year, they're expected to pick a major. And so a student might think that they want to major in accounting. They start taking accounting classes and then find out, you know what, I still want a business degree, but accounting's not my jam. I'd rather do finance, or I'd really like to be a marketer. And so they've spun their wheels and are not getting through the program as fast. And as parents, I'm sure you're concerned about that, because then you're spending more tuition. So the great thing about the Business Scholar program is we introduce students to all of the different business majors right in the beginning of their academic career, help them understand what all is offered to them in the business school, and give them the ability to make a really informed decision by the time they're in their sophomore year. By the time they're at the end of their sophomore year, they're very certain what major they want to go into, and then for the next 2 years, they finish that up. We also have integrated different experiences that most schools will sometimes give to students later on, even in MBA programs, but we're doing that while they're freshmen. So they're meeting with some of the very best professors. They get to travel, they get to go and visit different companies, and they get to meet in small groups. So instead of a 200 or 300 person class, we're putting them into the Business Scholars class, which is large, but then we put them in different sections and different cohorts, and then even reduce those sections to teams where they're working very closely with 5, 6 different people and having class sizes that are 40 people max. So they get a really intimate private school experience while at a large 30,000 student Pac-12 university. So it's the best of both worlds, that small intimate experience, but also the resources of a large university, and an acclaimed and very highly or low ranked, as you see it, but a great ranking for a business school as well. We have all of our students have an academic advisor that's going to make sure that they are taking all of the classes that they need to and none of the classes that they don't need to, figuring out what AP, CE, IB. We see students with all kinds of amazing credits coming into school, and they make sure that they know exactly what those will count for. We also have our career advisors. So we have a business career services, an entire department with 30 some odd people that work there that help your students understand how to get a job, how to be prepared. They work with them on resume preparation, interview skills, internships. So they really help them chart their path through the business school and to career. We won't go through this today, but I would highly recommend that you can go to our website eccles.utah.edu, and you can look at all kinds of statistics and information if you click on Business Career Services about where we place and how we place students and the starting salaries, and we are very competitive and do a great job. And a lot of credit to Business Career Services, which was also developed under Taylor, and has just come about in the past few years, and this really exceptional program and department for our students. We want to give the students real world experience, not just classroom. It's fun to hear from some of the professors, I would like to think, but we want them to talk to professionals out in the field, and we want them to say, you know, I know you studied accounting, but what does your job look like? What is your company culture like? What do you really do each day? And so we take them in town and out of town to visit and network with different individuals, a lot of alums, and really get to understand what it means to be a graduate from the business school and what opportunities they have for them and what their career will look like once they graduate. And we really challenge our students to have a sense of discovery, to find out what they're passionate about. And business is awesome because really you can go into anything. And so whatever industry they feel passionate about or they would love to work in, there's accountants, there's marketers, there's information systems. And so we help them identify the path and the career and the companies that are going to be the best fit for them. So that's the vision of Business Scholars. Historically, we started out with 40 students. I'm lucky that I've been involved with Business Scholars since the very beginning. I came in at the very end of that first class year with 40 students. And we now will have 492. We've scaled to a 500 student program. Due to COVID, we're a little under that number, but still expect to have quite a few students joining us, and we're really excited, and they're all stellar students. So we average around a 26, it was like 26.4, so I didn't feel like we could round it up to 27, but high GPA and ACT. So a 26 average for all of our 500 students and a 3.7 average GPA. We're working to get a few more women in business, but we've got a split of 65-35 female-male, and in-state, out-of-state, which is really pretty remarkable, and this is staying even with Corona. At 40% of our students are now coming from out-of-state, as opposed to 15 when we first started, so we've really had that as an initiative as well. We have students from almost every state. We still need to get, you know, some of those Midwest states and a few in the South. But we're working hard to have representation from all over the US and also all over the world. This is a harder year for international students, but we do know that we still have students coming from Norway, Germany, India, and Canada, which we're excited to welcome them. In other years, we've had more international students, and we have a bunch that have deferred until next year just due to travel, but we will have some international students joining us, which we're really happy about. Here's just a few cool things to tell you about our Business Scholars. 68% of all of our students coming in maintained at least a 3.5 or above GPA in high school, and that's unweighted, not a weighted one. 1 in 5 have over a 30 on the ACT, and like we said, our average GPA is 3.7, ACT 26-27. So smart kiddos. We just enjoy so much the fervor that they have for learning and how engaged they are in learning, and we really try to help them develop that even further and encourage that. The students coming in have reported to us that they have over $2.5 million in scholarships, and we have students that are coming in already with a lot of credits, so CE credits, AP, associate's degrees. We have some students that already have earned an associate's degree, and IB, international baccalaureate degrees. Our cohort, as it stands, is about 154 coming into the global program and 338 coming into our domestic program. And a couple other just interesting facts quickly. They have some amazing broad interests. So we have students that have competed in DECA and FBLA competitions through high school. We have athletes, and many of these are actually on the University of Utah teams as well. Fine arts, we have students that, one of the great things about my particular job in admissions is I get to read all of their essays coming in, and students just have fantastic life experiences that they bring with them. And we have students who are focused on art and want to do business in art, some that are double majoring in dance. We've got students who are on the marching band. And so all kinds of cool artistic students and things that they're interested in. We have a lot of humanitarian efforts, so students that report that they've been Girl Scouts and Eagle Scouts and the Boy Scout program, ones that volunteer at children's hospitals, and then we have students that have done humanitarian trips all over the world, which is really neat. We also have a lot of students that report to us that they are entrepreneurial and have already started their own businesses. So we had one student at the ripe old age of 11 started their own business making zippered pouches. But we also have students, and this is just a small snippet, by the way, of students and interesting things that they tell us, but we have students that are licensed in real estate. We have a licensed insurance agent that's joining us. And mind you, these are still, 18 to 20-year-old students that are coming in. One that started a ski tuning business in his garage, another that started a nonprofit to help out kids in lower socioeconomic areas and help them get to school and achieve their dreams. So just really cool things that students are reporting to us. Last thing I'm going to talk to you about are our Eccles ambassadors. All of your students have been assigned an Eccles ambassador that reaches out to them and helps them, guides them through the business school. They will meet with them weekly at our Friday classes. They also will meet with the Eccles ambassadors monthly just as a check-in. They serve as our eyes and ears. They've all gone through the program and then they help us out. They also mentor the students, help them understand how to take advantage of opportunities, what might be a good route for them, where to go if they want to get a good meal on campus, where to go and who to talk to if they need any kind of information, clubs that they could be associated in, all kinds of things. So our Eccles ambassadors, we have over 40 this year, and each of them are assigned, give or take, about 12 to 13 of your students. And they are their first line of contact for really anything they need to know about the U of U. Of course, we're always available as well. We take on some of the bigger issues and we let the fun stuff and the student activities and all the student questions go to the ambassadors. So please encourage your students to reach out to the ambassadors and utilize them because they are a great resource. And they want to help students. They want them to take advantage of every opportunity that they have. And they're really, really excited. My last thing that I want to say, and then I will turn the time over, is I have a son that just graduated from high school. When I graduated from high school, I remember going to my graduation, but I don't remember anything that was said. I will remember forever his graduation, and I guarantee you I will remember forever this year and all of the planning and all of the pivoting and all of the changing that we've had to do to get ready to welcome your students. And I just want to assure you that we have plan A, B, C, all the way to Z in place to be able to offer them the best experience possible. And we really want them to love learning, to engage, to love their ambassadors, to get involved. And we have plans to do that. So please encourage them to work with us, to reach out to us, let us know what they need. If they're struggling, we're here to help them. And we are super excited to actually have interaction again with students and welcome them on campus tomorrow in a very safe, socially distanced, masked sort of a way. So on that note, I will turn the time over to Mandy and stop sharing my screen and she can share hers.
Great, thanks, Elena. So I'm going to get my screen pulled up really quickly here for you also. My name is Mandy Hammelstrom and I am the director over the program portion of the Business Scholars Program. I'm also the director for the Uinta cohort. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the program and some of the schedule things and some of the switches that we've made in our schedule to make sure that we can offer the best possible experience for your students. So the Business Scholars Program has 3 different cohorts. Your student's cohort will be determined by the section that they're in. Students can find out which section they're in based on their class schedule or their Canvas schedule. If your student is in section 1 through 5, that means they're in the Wasatch cohort. Elena is the director for the Wasatch cohort, and they will meet on Fridays from 8:35 to 11:35. We also have the Uinta cohort, which is sections 6 through 10, and we will meet on Fridays from 9:40 to 12:40, and I'm the director for that cohort. And then we also have our Himalaya cohort, which is our global cohort that is new this year, and Bonita is the director over the Himalaya cohort. So students that are in section 11 through 15 will meet on Friday mornings from 9 in the morning until noon. So your students should already be in their Canvas course. They should already know what time their schedule is and everything. We also will have the ambassadors that they meet with tomorrow, either in person or virtually. They'll be able to help them make sure that everything's all good to go and set up in Canvas, and they know exactly where they need to be for their first week of class. So I'm going to go through some of the highlights for the year for the Wasatch and Uinta cohorts, as well as the Himalaya cohort on the next slide. So we have switched some things around in our schedule in order to hopefully have the best chance at offering the students everything that we would like to do. So we have flip-flopped our schedule. Normally we travel on our out-of-state trips in the fall semester. This year we have flipped that to the spring semester in hopes that we can have a little bit more time for things to settle down. And we have moved some of our spring events up into the fall semester. So the fall semester, your students will experience 3 core experiences taught by top faculty members within the business school. So I have another slide in a bit here that will go over all of the core experiences. But they're designed really to introduce your students to all of the business majors and help them decide what they want to major in. To that note, the students will go through a major overview and learn about professionalism. So what to wear, how to conduct yourself, typical interview questions, how to have the best chance at earning internships and a full-time job offer when you graduate. So we'll start working with them on that their freshman year. We also have a whole day around business communication. We have a team building day coming up early on in the spring. So that's designed for your students to really interact with the other students that are in their class and their cohort, get to know students, make friends, meet with their ambassadors, things like that. And then we also have moved our leadership retreat to the fall semester this year. Last year we did our leadership retreat down in Zion National Park. We have adjusted that to actually take the students up to Midway near Park City this year. So we are fortunate that we live in a beautiful place and we can do a lot of outdoor activities in the mountains. And so we felt that this was the best chance to offer students a weekend leadership retreat, but still be close enough to home that if something happens, we can get our students home and we can also offer them still the best experience. So for the leadership retreat, we fly guest speakers in, we have them speak with your students, and then we also do a premiere activity. So students will be able to go golfing, go paddleboarding, go kayaking, float the river, things like that. So students can sign up for the adventure that they would like to participate in. Some of you might already know, but Zion National Park is limiting how many people can go into the park this year. And so we felt the best chance to be able to offer them a really great experience would be to shift to something that we can actually control what they're doing and how many people can sign up for different experiences and try to give them the best possible experience. The spring semester, the students will finish out the 2 core experiences. We also have a winter sports day. So we have a guest speaker from the outdoor industry come in and talk to your students about how you can make your business and make a way to make money off of the things that you love doing. We have so many outdoor companies here, and we have some really great people that your students will hear from. And then in the afternoon, we actually take your students up to the ski resort to go skiing if they'd like to. We will also take them on local company visits, so visiting companies around the Salt Lake Valley. And then travel permitting, we will also do our domestic business trips in the spring. So I have some slides in a bit that will tell you the trip locations and the dates that we're planning for. At the end of the year, we cap off the program with an innovation showcase. So throughout the year, your students will be working with a team. And I saw a question come through the chat earlier about how we tie in with LaSonde and the entrepreneurship program. So this innovation showcase is actually a project that we work with LaSonde on. So your students are put into teams and are tasked with coming up with a product or a service that they can sell and make an impact in the world with. So they'll work on this project and actually build a prototype, and at the end of the year they pitch their idea, and we have judges come around and the students get awards for the best product, the best prototype, the best idea. And so we cap off the year with our innovation showcase. The global cohort has a few differences. So you're still learning about all of the different majors through your core experiences, the major overview, professionalism, business communication, team building day, and the leadership retreat. The students in the global program will also be doing the leadership retreat up in Midway, Park City, Utah. We also will do the winter sports day, the local company visits, and we do have our international trip planned for spring break for all of the students in the Himalaya global section. So we're hoping that by spring break, our students will be able to participate. The trip for that is currently planned is to London and Paris. And so we're doing everything that we can to ensure that students can have this opportunity. Obviously, there are things or potential travel restrictions that may come into play, but we are monitoring it super closely and very often, and we will be communicating with you. Andrea will probably touch on this in the Q&A session at the end of this as well, but the trip that is currently planned is over spring break to London and Paris. And the global section will also finish with the innovation showcase as well. Part of the goal of the Business Scholars Program is to help students learn what they want to major in. So some business programs, you go into college, you do all of your gen eds, you take your pre-business classes, and then you're expected to know exactly what you want to major in once you get into the business school without ever actually having taken an accounting or finance class. So we've kind of tried to flip that model upside down and give the students an introduction to all of the business majors from their freshman year, so that they can decide what they like, what they don't like, what they want to major in early on, and they can start to pursue that. So that has helped our students learn what they want to major in earlier. It has helped students cut back on changing their major, which typically ends up taking students longer to graduate and costing more money if they have to change their majors. So we see most of our students are able to decide what they want to major in without having to switch their majors, because they've had that introduction early on. The other thing it helps with is that students can go out and start looking for internship, job shadowing, and opportunities like that a little bit earlier, so that they can have the best possible chance of getting their dream jobs when they graduate in the industry that they're interested in. The School of Business has 9 majors, so you can see them listed here, and each of our cores, which I'll talk about next, will kind of tie all of these majors in to help your students get introduced to them. So the core experiences that your students will be going through and learning about for the Wasatch and Uinta cohorts, Core 1 is strategic market entry, Core 2 is data-driven hiring, Core 3 is leading value creation through operations and supply chain, Core 4 is consumer understanding, and Core 5 is speaking the language of business. And you can see that each of these lectures are taught by some of our top business school faculty members. So your students right from the very beginning of their freshman year are learning from some of the best professors that we have in the School of Business. And we also do a majors day where we teach your students specifically how each of the majors tie into these cores. So we'll tell them, if you're going through Core 3, leading value creation through operations and supply chain, and you really love it, that might be a good indicator that you want to major in operations and supply chain. So we help them kind of piece it apart and see which areas they liked and which they didn't like, and help them decide what they'd like to major in going forward from there. The global cohort has 5 cores as well. They are similar, but they are all focused through an international lens of learning about the world of business. So Core 1 is selecting a market and entry strategy. Core 2 is leading value creation through operations and supply chain. Core 3 is quantitative tools for international business. Core 4 is tackling poverty through entrepreneurship. And Core 5 is global consumer relevance. And again, these cores are all taught by our top faculty members for your students to get an introduction to those. Another thing that's nice about that is your students are getting exposure to several of the different professors that we have in the School of Business right from their first year. So this also helps them know what the professors are like, what their teaching styles are like, and what classes they might want to sign up for in the future. We also take our students on an in-town company visit. So again, we have switched our in-town company visits to the spring semester, when hopefully companies will be kind of opening back up and getting back into their offices and things. So students will all go on one company visit. Some of the visits that we've gone to in the past have been Maverick, Adobe, OC Tanner, Podium, Vivint Smart Home Arena, Backcountry, CR England, Packsize, Intermountain Healthcare. We try to provide a variety of company visits to your students, and we do that on purpose so that they can, number one, see that every corporation has a lot of moving parts, a lot of different departments, and show them that you may be able to pair what you love doing in the industry that you love with the major and the actual field of study that you love. So for example, if you really love marketing, you may be able to go work for Backcountry's marketing department. Or if you really love accounting, every company has to have some kind of an accounting department. So you can kind of pair that with what you love doing. And so that's what our company visits are designed to show the students. The business trips that we mentioned earlier, these are the locations, and I have a slide for each of the cohorts so you'll all see what dates and locations we're planning on. Obviously, these are subject to change, but we're doing our best to make sure that we can make these happen. We're very closely monitoring, airlines and flights and capacities, and we're working with hotels and what this would look like for us to be able to go. But for the Wasatch cohort, depending on what section your students are in, Section 1 and 2 will be traveling to San Francisco the weekend of February 18th through the 20th. Sections 3 and 4 will be traveling to Chicago the weekend of March 25th through the 27th. And Section 5 will be traveling to Seattle the weekend of March 25th through the 27th. If your student is in the Uinta cohort, Section 6 and 7 will be traveling to Los Angeles February 25th through the 27th. Sections 8 and 9 will be traveling to Dallas the weekend of March 18th and 20th. And Sections 10 will be traveling to Seattle with Section 5 the weekend of March 25th through the 27th. If your student is in the Global Himalaya cohort, as I mentioned before, our trip is currently planned for Paris and London, and that would be the week over spring break. So again, we have shifted. Originally, we planned on taking students, half the students in the fall and half the students in the spring. We have shifted it so that we can take everybody in the spring to try to buy a little bit more time as well. So again, to Andrea's point earlier, we will communicate often and openly, and we're working on this every single day to make sure that we can have this experience for your students and have a good experience for your students. We have worked tirelessly on planning and replanning in versions A, B, D, and C. My team has a contingency plan that's color-coded based on what color we might be in for Utah, so that we can make sure that, if we need to do company visits with students in groups of 20 or less, we can do that. If we need to do we need to offer some extra virtual company visits or virtual meet and greet sessions. We're really working hard to make sure that we can offer above and beyond of what we normally do, so that your students feel like they're really getting the best possible experience out of their freshman year. So I have one other slide to cover before I pass the time over to Bonita. Your students will be getting a survey. So after they meet with their ambassadors tomorrow and before the first Friday class, there is a survey that we do send out that will be due. So I wanted to give the parents and guardians a heads up, because they may be coming to you asking for insurance information and all these things that you may be thinking, why do they need that right now? This is why. So we do send out a survey to collect general information as well as travel information. So we book contracts months and months in advance. So we are planning these trips and doing everything that we can to make them happen. And so we do need your students' travel information, emergency contacts, insurance information, dietary restrictions, things like that. So if your student comes to you and has all of these questions, this is why, and this is where it's coming from. And then one other thing that I'll just note before I pass the time over to Bonita, but I know Andrea, Taylor, all of the directors, everybody will kind of echo this, but we love our jobs. We love working with your students. We are all very fortunate to be working in higher education, and one of the things that we love about it is working directly with the students and being able to help them learn and grow and transition. And we understand the importance of the freshman year experience to your students. And so I can tell you that we truly are doing everything that we can to try to make sure that they have that experience and have a community at the University of Utah. So with that, I will pass the time over to Bonita, and she will take over.
Thanks, Mandy. Thank you, Mandy. I'm Bonita Austin. I'm the academic director for the program, and I'm a professor in entrepreneurship and strategy. And like Elena, I've been here for a while. I've been teaching at the U since 2008. And so I got to teach the very first cohort of business scholars and have been involved in the program since. So I'm really super excited about what we're going to be able to do academically with your students this year. We have great professors that have worked very hard to create really interesting integrated projects so that students will understand how value creation works from the perspective of each one of the disciplines of business, and then how those disciplines work together. My own emphasis, because I came out of industry, is really on application. So we give them the theory that they need, but we also really emphasize solving real world problems and simulating those real world problems in the classroom. I'm going to share my screen with you because I want to go over a few things with regard to academics for the program. Let's see, here we go. All right, so Mandy mentioned already the core topics that we're going to cover. I thought it would be nice also to show that we have a few enrichment topics. We have a group of professors that offer special guest lectures to students, and those enrichment topics will be ethics, which is taught by Dr. Abe Bakshishi. He is in charge of the Daniels Ethics effort here at the University of Utah. We will also have sustainability, which Andrea Thomas, actually our undergraduate assistant dean, is going to be teaching based on her experience with Walmart. We have a former advertising executive that teaches an advertising unit. We also have added this year, because of student interest, how you can create value through nonprofits. So we're really excited about having that as a special topic. And then we have a perennial favorite, risk and finance. So we're going to add those in to the academic curriculum that Mandy already went over with you with regard to the core. Let me just go over a few more things with regard to the academics of the program. So in terms of the expectations that we have of your students, we expect them to commit to being in the Business Scholars Program for the entire year, which means fall and spring semester. It's not a one-term course. Attendance is mandatory, but if a student is ill, they feel sick at all, we are asking our ambassadors to echo this to the students. We don't want them to come to class, and we do have things set up so that if they're not feeling well, or for some reason they need to be quarantined, they can still participate in the academic portion of the program. We have video lectures that are going to be recorded. We have some that are already posted on Canvas, and we'll help them out as far as accommodations go. They just need to make sure they let us know that they're sick. And so they're going to be asked to tell their ambassadors if they're not feeling well, and they just will need to make up their work. But we'll do everything we can to be as flexible as possible given the weird situation that we're in right now. Other things that aren't excused that students, I have to say, I will probably never forget this, but right before final exams about 10 years ago, a student came up to me and said that she was going to miss the final exam because her parents were flying her to New York to go shopping on the final exam day. So as a professor, I was kind of crushed. As far as the Business Scholars Program goes, we don't excuse that kind of thing. And so we don't excuse family trips and weddings and recreational kinds of trips. And we don't excuse sorority and fraternity activities. But we do, of course, excuse any university excused absence. Those are always accepted, always accepted. We are going to, as I mentioned before, deliver content in person, but we have a couple of days during the term that the university has asked us, 2 days, they've asked us to present everything online. There are 2 weeks in the fall where all classes will be online in order to be kind of a circuit breaker for COVID-19. And then 1 week will be online because the vice presidential debates are scheduled to be on campus, and that's a security issue. So your students will know when they sign into Canvas exactly where they need to be, what time they need to be there, and whether the class is going to be in person or it'll be on the internet. I have a very detailed syllabus posted for them, and we're encouraging them to read the syllabus before the term starts so they'll know exactly what they need to do. And they're, of course, welcome to ask questions of me or any of their ambassadors or any of the directors. The code of conduct for the program is very straightforward. This is not a matter of the law. It is a matter of our own our own standard for the program. When we take a trip, we don't permit students or faculty, for that matter. No one in the Business Scholars Program will be doing drugs, will be drinking, will be smoking in any area that's not appropriate. It doesn't matter if your student happens to be 21 and they're legally entitled to drink. On a Business Scholars trip, we don't permit that. And the faculty that go along and the directors that go along also abide by this code. So we have a zero tolerance policy for breaking that code. The ramifications are actually really serious. And so what we ask students to observe before we go on a trip is not just the code of conduct, but to remember how serious it is if they were to break this code of conduct. So if your student's 21 and they want to go out partying, great, as long as it's back here in Utah and not on a trip. We also ask students to please remember that it's important to be respectful of everyone in the program, their colleagues, the faculty, and the administration, and anybody we meet on a trip. Last year, I had the great pleasure of taking the Transfer Scholars Cohort to Washington, and an older gentleman came up to me in the hotel as we were checking out and told me how great the students were because they were so polite and friendly to him. They got his whole life story, and he just enjoyed them so much. And that's what we really want to happen on every trip. We want our students to be great representatives of the School of Business and also the University of Utah. And honestly, we have such great kids in this program, really have not had a lot of problems, but they need to be cognizant of the downside if they do break this code of conduct. Students also, from an academic perspective, these students are very high achievers, and I am confident they will be successful in school, particularly because we have a lot of resources to help them if they need extra help. But they have to maintain a GPA of 3.2 to remain in good standing with the Business Scholars Program. If they fall below a 3.2, that student would be placed on probation for 1 semester to give them an opportunity to bring their GPA back up to 3.2. If they can't maintain that 3.2 GPA, they will lose their status as a business scholar, which would mean they're also no longer automatically admitted to the Eccles School of Business, and they wouldn't be able to take classes that are reserved for business scholars. We have recently changed our core requirements for the business school. So all of the students will be enrolled in the B core classes, which means our class, which is BUS 3995, is one of the requirements for fall and spring term. They will also take Business 1051, which is a Foundations of Business, and several other B core courses. We have a great advising team, and they will be working with your students to make sure they get the classes they need in the semester that they need them. We also have a lot of terrific academic resources. One of the things that is really tough, I think, as an adjustment from high school to college is just kind of learning how to juggle everything, schedule it, prioritize things. And sometimes students struggle with that prioritization, and sometimes they struggle because they're learning something they've never even heard of before. So we have a bunch of resources for helping them. We have free tutoring in the business school. The Eccles ambassadors are also outstanding students, and they've already gone through their freshman year, so they know how to make the adjustment. We have TAs that are part of the ambassador corps that are dedicated to specific topics throughout the year that are available to help. They have regular office hours. They will also do virtual office hours, so they can help students no matter where the student is located. And then, of course, the Business Scholar staff, myself and the other directors, we are here to help your students be successful, and I'm confident they will be successful. So FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, is a law that was passed to protect the privacy of your students' education records. Sorry, my light just went dim. So when a student turns 18 or they enter any post-secondary institution at any age, the rights that you had when they were minors or were not enrolled in a post-secondary educational institution are not there anymore. So if you want to have access to your students' records, they have to authorize that. They have to authorize that you can have access to that stuff. We can't talk about their grades because we'd be breaking this law. So if you need to talk to us about grades or anything academic related, if your student gives you permission to do so, gives us that permission, then we can do it. Otherwise, we can't. I'm going to switch subjects just for a second and briefly go over what we call Business Scholar Standard. This is part of professionalism. So in addition to helping your students really be successful academically and also help them become engaged in the business college and the rest of the university, we want them to really learn what professionalism is. And part of professionalism is dress. So when they do a presentation, or we go on a company visit either here in Utah or in the local area, or we go on an out-of-town business trip, we ask them to wear what we call Business Scholar Standard. So that means for both men and women, solid colored slacks, or for women, they can also wear a skirt if they prefer, a colored or patterned shirt for both of them. And we ask the women to just have a neat hairstyle, don't wear really flashy jewelry. And this actually is a safety requirement. Closed-toed shoes you can walk in. That's because a lot of companies won't let us on the property unless we are having everyone wear closed-toed shoes, especially if we're going to go on a factory tour. It's a safety issue. For the men, they don't have to wear a jacket. They can just wear a shirt and a tie. They also need to have a neat hairstyle and closed-toed shoes. So it's not a very difficult standard to meet. However, I know that all of you are thinking about how much you pay for tuition and all the other things to support your students. If you check out some of these less expensive outlets, you can probably find some inexpensive clothing for them to wear. You do not need to go out and buy a suit for your young man or your young woman. They don't have to wear that for our program. And I want to point out something that is relatively new. Business Career Services, which is a terrific resource for the students, has something that we call a career closet. And that has professional clothing that's been donated by our alumni. And that is available for any David Eccles School of Business student to borrow. So let's say that your student decided that she was going to wear a skirt to an interview and she didn't have an appropriate blouse. She could go over and borrow it. Let's say that your young man student decided that he needed to wear a suit and he didn't have a tie, or he needed a pair of shoes. We have things that they can borrow in that closet. So do not feel like you have to go out and buy a lot of new clothes for them, because you don't. If they need something, we can help them by letting them borrow something from the career closet. It's really a great resource. One more thing I'm going to mention, we have a terrific program called Eccles Global. Elena mentioned Buzz Welch earlier. He helped start this program with Dean Randall. Now it's been quite a long time ago. He now is in charge of Eccles Global, which is our way of helping students get an international experience. There are a lot of fun things they can sign up for. They can sign up for 1-week trips. They can also go to school abroad. I was lucky and I was able to teach in Paris for a couple of summers, and it was just a terrific experience. The students had a great time. They learned a ton, and they really enjoyed being a part of a big city like Paris and getting a real flavor for the culture of the country and of the city. And so we have a lot of options available around the world for students to sign up for. We also have a bunch of condensed programs that are available in the summer, which will let them go through different minors like or certificates like the entrepreneurship certificate in a very quick fashion, so that they can knock out a whole minor or a certificate in a summer and still get an international experience. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Andrea Thomas.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Benita. So we've been trying to answer your questions fast and furiously. A couple of the questions that have come up that I'll just answer in general, because we've had multiple questions, are around fees and what our plans are for travel. So we rearranged our schedule so that we could move all travel into spring, in hopes that by spring that the countries are opening up and that travel is safer and more comfortable for people. And so this is our plan. We're monitoring it very, very closely. In the event that we can't go on the trips, you will not be charged for the trips. So the fees go for trips, but they also go for winter sports day and the backpacks that your students are going to be getting tomorrow and some of the other things that we do. But we're not going to charge you anything that we're not going to be able to deliver. So we will keep a very close eye on what we can do, and then we will adjust fees. So for example, if your students are signed up for Global Scholars, the leadership retreat was meant to go to Vancouver, and we are going to fly to an international location. We had to change that, so we'll still be having the leadership retreat, but it's going to be in Midway, and so there will be a refund of the flight amount that we will refund on your next semester fees. And so same thing will happen in the spring if we're unable to travel. The first thing that we'll do, especially for the international trip, because travel domestically is open now. So we're not worried about travel domestically. We've got all kinds of things that we're doing to make sure that everybody's safe. The airlines have protocols for masks and things like that. International travel is currently closed, and so that's what we're keeping a very close eye on. So in international travel, if we can't go spring break, then we're looking at offering that trip at the end of the school year before summer starts. And if that can't happen, then we're actually also looking at offering some business consulting programs that are international, where we can get started on a project, and then the students can travel to the location. So we've got Amsterdam, Paris, and Barcelona. So these are programs that we will explain to the students as other options. If that's not looking like it's going to pan out, then we will refund your money, your fees, and so, but offer lots of Eccles Global opportunities as well. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that all students have an opportunity, if they want, to travel with the Eccles School of Business. Being empathetic global citizens is one of our values, and it's really important to us. So I hope you can see that we're looking at lots of different ways. We've got lots of different contingency plans. If the university decides that student travel out of state isn't an option, then the same thing will happen in the domestic side of things, where we won't charge you for that. We'll refund it on the student fees. So hopefully that that addresses that question. This is the pretty tricky part of things. So the fees that are built in already. So when you go to pay tuition, you will see student fees as well. Those fees already cover the trip. So you don't pay more for the business scholars trip. It's included in your fees. If you want to attend an Eccles Global event, we have different 1 week, 4 week, 8 week, 12 weeks. So there's different programs. And so those all have charges associated with them. If you go to the Eccles Global website, then you'll be able to see everything that we have planned, and we'll keep those updated so that we will make sure that you know what we can and can't do. We have amazing international partners who are located in the countries that we travel to, and so they've got everything set up for us right now. So it just comes down to whether the European Union or whichever country it is allowing foreign visitors because of COVID. I got some questions about the B Corps a little bit and general education. So I'll give you a little bit of background into the new Business Corps, which this is the second year of the Business Corps. The thought process behind it is for us to offer an integrated experience and a foundation that students will be able to build on when they get into their major. So their first semester, they are taking a block that's 6 credit hours. So that includes a careers class, which is B Corps 1010, a critical thinking class, which is B Corps 2020, and the Vibe class, which is looking at entrepreneurship, which is B Corps 2040. So that's 6 credit hours, plus they'll have the 3 credit hours for business scholars. And Mandy kind of went over that earlier. So it feels like their very, very first semester semester. They don't have any time for general education. The really awesome thing about general education is that there's many different options of classes that you can take. And so they work really well to help you manage your schedule and fill out your schedule because you've got more flexibility. So that's why we stage them through the B Corps the way that we do, so that they're never behind a semester because they didn't get a prerequisite. So Business Corps 2020, B Corps 2020 has to be taken before B Corps 2030. And then B Corps 2030 has to be taken before the business fundamentals. So if we don't help you stage that, then you could run into a situation where it takes you a semester longer than you want. So what you'll find is that our business core classes tend to be heavier than the fall and have a little less in the spring. And so it'll be easy to fill in classes that are general education classes in the spring. So the any Eccles global program that is available in the summer, or we have some semester programs as well, those are available to all business scholars and actually all Eccles business students. And so we do have opportunities. You don't have to be in the global cohort of business scholars in order to be able to go do Eccles global trips. The reason we created a global scholars program is because we saw that there was a lot of interest with some students to have a career, an international career. And so we wanted them to get exposure to that as early as possible to help them make those decisions. So there's been a question around GPA. So yes, for business scholars, we ask them to maintain a 3.2 average. That's also the average that the business school looks for the pre-business to let you into a major. And so you do need to maintain, it's a little bit under a B+ average. Now, if your student falls below that, there's several things that they can do. They can retake a class, they can get another semester under their belt, and then they can come back, and if they pop back up to a 3.2, we'll admit them back in to the major or the to be in business scholars, which is auto admitting them into a business administration major. They still need to apply for other majors, but the business administration major is the one that they're automatically eligible for. So business scholars is the Business Scholars Program. $39.95 is freshman. It is 1 year, and you do both fall and spring. We also have a transfer program for business scholars, and that's 1 semester. We have a Business Scholars Certificate that they can get involved in as well, which they will do the whole 4 years, and then they graduate with a Business Scholars Certificate. So those are kind of the ways in with business scholars, but much of what your students will be doing after their freshman year, and especially after they're done with business core, is going into a major. And then there's lots of programs within majors that help them develop and get internships and get experiences in the areas that they're interested in working in. So business scholars, the class, the $39.95 class is for 1 year, but there's the club and activities and the certificate that they can be involved in for all 4 years. So let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to read and answer all at the same time. So the students who took the B Corps summer classes, so we had about 100 students sign up for summer classes, and that gives them a head start, but it also had the residency clock start, because residency during COVID, you just needed to be engaged in class. So if they took those classes, what you need to do is immediately get a driver's license while you're here, and then go to the residency office, which is over in the Student Services building, and make sure that they see and that you were in classes during the summer. And then your residency clock will start when you started classes, which was, I believe, June 18th. So it was mid-June. let's see, the cost of the international trips is usually between $3,000 and $3,500. It changes every year. It depends on what's going on with airfare and things like that. So, so generally we allocate $3,500 for that. The students get per diem with that. So what that means is if we aren't feeding them a meal, we give them money for them to be able to buy their own meal. And the reason that we wouldn't feed them a meal is if they have free time, and then they can go out and get a meal as part of free time, but we have a lot of planned meals as well. So that's like an all-inclusive. The $3,500 is all-inclusive. And so that's generally how much it costs. That's going to be on the Eccles Global website. Now, if you're doing school in addition, then that's going to be a different amount because that's a longer period of time. So that's just a 1 week trip. So there's a couple people that are asking about if they're in the general section and they want to change to global, is that possible? And the answer is it's possible, but we have to hurry because tomorrow they're going to be meeting with their Eccles ambassadors. So if that's something that they're interested in doing, you can reach out to, probably Elena's the best one to reach out to. So that's elena.williamson@eccles.utah.edu. And then she can quickly change your sections. What that means is we have to change your schedule, and then the fees will be adjusted, and we have to assign you to a new ambassador. So we want to get that done really quickly, but it is possible. There are also opportunities to go on international trips after the freshman year. That is something that Eccles Global always has things. There's minors that you can do. So for example, you can study abroad and get an information systems minor or an entrepreneurship minor. So we've got a lot of really awesome programs that include international travel. And so that's something that you can take a look at, and there's lots of opportunities. So the year that they tend to apply to their major is after they're finished with their business core. And generally that's going to take it takes 4 semesters. If you go summers, then obviously the time period is shorter. So what happens is you're automatically in business administration, but if you want to apply to, for example, the finance major or the accounting major, then there's a process to do that their academic advisors can help them with. There's also other majors. There's some grade requirements for some majors that you want to make sure that they have those grade requirements. Others, it's the same as business administration. So management, marketing, those are the same as business administration. So the academic advisors, every student is assigned an academic advisor during their new student orientation, and they'll have all that information for you. Plus, it's also available on the eccles.utah.edu website, so you can look in and see all of those requirements. The Business Scholars Program does allow you time for a minor in a language. We just would have you look at the sequence of the business core, and so make sure that you work into the classes so that you have what you need to get into your major, but there is time. You need 122 hours in order to get a bachelor's degree, and I know some students come in with AP credits and with concurrent enrollment credits, and so the degree audit or the whole plan can be worked on through your academic advisors. Let's see. There will be Eccles Global opportunities for all 4 years. One thing that gets a little bit tricky is it's easy for us to offer business core classes and general education classes in Eccles Global. For us to offer a particular major class or a couple of major classes is a little bit trickier. And so I would just have them kind of look at their schedule, look at what we typically teach, and then that's also a really great way to get a minor. but we do Eccles trips all the time and really love to give people the opportunities to go out and have that international experience. The upper division level course that's listed in the fees, so that's for any class in the business school over 3,000. So when you're taking business core the second year, those classes are over 3,000, your major classes are over 3,000, and business scholars is over 3,000. So you do pay differential tuition for all of those classes. And you do need a certain number of upper division classes to be able to graduate, and this does go towards the number of classes that you need to graduate. I did get a few questions about computers. So the tricky thing with Mac computers is that there are some programs that they use in highly quantitative, like finance classes or information systems classes, that don't have the same capability when you run it on a Mac computer. And so the finance department, information systems department, they all recommend that you have a Windows-based computer that you can use because you'll have full functionality of those programs.
Andrea, can I just add really quick, in the question and answer, in the answered, I put in the standard language that we put in syllabi for the computers. Students should have access to a computer. We do have computer labs on campus if that is an issue. They can get by with a Mac for some majors, but and if they already have a Mac or a MacBook, we don't recommend that they have to go buy a new one. But if you are in the market for a new computer, we highly recommend a Windows-based purchase.
Okay, thanks, Elena. One thing is, somebody asked about renting computers. I would look and try to buy a used computer as opposed to renting a computer. They do have discounts at the bookstore also for computers, but it is something that they're going to need a computer all 4 years. So by the time you rent one for 4 years, I think you've already paid for one, especially if you purchase a used one. And so that's something that I would just look into. In order for a student to graduate in 4 years, they would need to take 15 credit hours per semester if they don't go summers. You need 122 credit hours to graduate with your bachelor's degree. Now, depending on what you come into school with, if you've had AP classes, if you had concurrent enrollment, then that's going to be a little bit different. But essentially you need 15 credit hours, and then 2 semesters you got to pick up another 2 credit hours in order to get to the 122 credit hours. I'm going to look and see if I've missed any. We've been answering questions in the chat and in the Q&A, and so I'm just going to look really quick, and I'll ask the team to holler if there's a question that I haven't answered. Here's one on getting a minor in dance at the same time. So one thing that's just tricky to balance is the class schedule. So in the first year, business scholars is taught Friday mornings. Business classes are not on Fridays. So undergraduate business classes are not taught on Fridays. So they won't have any conflicts with their business core classes or any business major classes. But if a dance class is taught Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or if they're trying to double major in engineering and they're requiring a class that's only taught Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it's in the morning, that can conflict. And so that's something that's kind of tricky. But if it's a minor, it's fewer credit hours. And then what I would recommend is having both an academic advisor in the business school and also speaking to an academic advisor in the college that you're interested in minoring in, so that you understand the staging of classes, not just the number of classes, because not every class, especially when you get up to the major and minor classes, not every class is taught every semester. There's also a question about Utah residency. So Utah is one of the easiest states to get residency in, but you just have to make sure that you follow the guidelines. So right away, get a driver's license. Just as fast as you can, go get a driver's license. And then you have to stay in the state for a full year, and you get 2 weeks that you can travel outside of the state. So don't plan to go home for a month between fall break and or between fall semester and spring semester. And then don't, like summer, you have to stick around for that summer as well. If you do an Eccles Global program, that counts as being on campus. So that's a really great way if you're trying to get residency to do Eccles Global over the summer, and then you can have that experience and it doesn't mess up your residency. So that's included as well. So Mandy, Elena, Bonita, did I miss anything? I'm going to go back and look, but if there's a question that we need to talk about.
There were a few questions. You just hit on it on the global. Questions about, is there a trip every single year? So in the $39.95 class, we have domestic cohort will go on a domestic trip in the spring semester, and then the global will go on a global trip. But there are opportunities for students to travel throughout the entire time that they're in the school. Those are not required. And Eccles Global would be one of the places, as well as if they're in the finance major, there's opportunities for a week on Wall Street. So there's plenty of opportunities to travel. Those would be additional charges. And I did want to touch on, because there was a question about the charges. Eccles Global, you can go for 4, 8, and 12 weeks. And so it's calculated based off of how long the students go. It does include housing. One thing that is really amazing is you can get residency without actually being in the state of Utah if you're on the study abroad. And the pricing, while it's subject to be determined for the summer, is generally very close to what a student would pay for tuition and housing on campus at the University of Utah. So it's very reasonable to be able to do a study abroad. The last thing I was going to say is, this is not, there's no one size fits all for every student, but if you were trying to figure out the best path for your student, a great way to do things would be, after their freshman year, especially if they're trying to get residency, do Eccles Global study abroad in the summer. And then after their sophomore and junior years, if they can do summer internships, sometimes it's with the same company, oftentimes it's with 2 different companies. And hopefully that junior internship is in a company and an industry that they're really interested in, that could turn into a job, so that they're being placed right after their senior year. So we encourage at least 1 and possibly 2 internships. That's not to say that some students don't do Eccles Global in between their junior and senior year, or sophomore and junior year, but that would be, you know, if you ask me the path, that would be the first path that I would maybe recommend for students.
Yeah, and I mentioned it a minute ago, but we've got a brand new program that we're rolling out this year, which is the Global Business Consulting Program. And so it actually starts at the very end of spring semester, and you'll be working in project teams on a project for a company, and you'll be starting virtually, and the companies are located in Amsterdam or Paris or Barcelona. And then if we're able, it will also include a trip to the location where you're doing the consulting work. And if not, then the whole thing will be virtual, but it'll be a great way to get experience on your resume, international experience. And I think there's been a little bit of confusion in Global Scholars. And so what Global Scholars is the business scholars view internationally. But all students, even if you do general business scholars, but you find out later that you're interested in international, you absolutely can participate in Eccles Global, still get international internships or international jobs. And so it's not something that if you don't start on day 1, that you can't still have an international business, but it just focuses our discussion and our vision, you know, the experience, all the majors through the lens of international. And so so hopefully that clarifies things. I see that there's a few specific questions about classes, and so I would recommend reaching out to the academic advisor, and they can tell you exactly what you need to do. And sometimes there's prerequisites of things that need to take place, and you maybe thought you did it in concurrent enrollment, but it was actually a different class that had the same number. So all of those types of things, your academic advisor can help you through that. Bonita, you had a point to make.
Yeah, so I wanted to answer two questions. The first question is a great question about tips for success in online classes. So a lot of your students are taking online classes this term. I happen to have been teaching in the MBA online cohort for the last couple of years. Andrea also has been teaching online for the last couple of years. I think the most important thing about online classes is that in order to keep students engaged in the course, so they stay interested and they want to check in frequently with the class, there are typically a lot of small assignments that they need to do. Some are designed to help students build a community in the classroom, such as maybe doing a little video recording and commenting on other students' video recordings. There are all kinds of things like that. The single most important thing to remember is that you've got to check in with that online class very frequently. You might think, hey, I can get ready for class the night before, which I wouldn't recommend anyway, but you might think that for a face-to-face class. If you only check in with your online class on an infrequent basis, you're going to miss a lot of assignments. And they may not be very large, but they add up over the term. So I think that's my best tip, is you've really got to be organized in your online classes. My second tip is that just because your professor is not standing in front of you doesn't mean that they don't care about you and that they don't want to hear from you. So if you need help or you have an issue, most online classes have TAs, and I know how I and the rest of the people on our academic staff select TAs. They are great. They're great people. They're great students. And so they have a couple of resources in the class that they can reach out to. Sometimes, especially freshmen, feel maybe a little bit intimidated, like they can't reach out to ask for help, or maybe they have an idea they want to talk about with a professor. I'm in the Department of Entrepreneurship and Strategy, and one of the things the entrepreneurship professors really, really enjoy is talking to students about their business ideas. And so when your student is going through that online class and they've been lucky enough to take an entrepreneurship class from Paul Brown, for example, who's in the Business Scholars Program, have them reach out to Paul. He's absolutely available to help them, just like the rest of the faculty. So those are my two big tips for online classes. Andrea, do you have any other suggestions for success in online classes?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important, it's pretty easy in an online class to only be kind of an observer and not to actually participate. And a lot of students, their learning style is really by being actively involved. And so even though it can be awkward in the beginning, just encourage them to pretend like they're sitting on the front row. And this is another thing, that students who come in and sit on the front row, they just naturally get more engaged than the ones who want to sit on the back row, just because that's front and center and they've kind of put themselves in a position. So in a virtual classroom, kind of virtually making sure that you're engaged, you're there, you're asking questions in the chat, you're kind of involved, you're going to retain more. And so the other thing that I would say is reach out to your professor or TA with anything. And that's another way to make sure that you're engaged. If you have a question about something, if you didn't understand something, it's far better to ask about it in the beginning than try to catch up later on. So those are my suggestions. There's also been a couple of things that I want to make sure that I address. Bonita, did you have anything else?
I have one more, I'm sorry.
Okay, do the one more and then I'll step in.
Yeah, sorry about that. I also saw in the question list that somebody was asking about whether the workload for the classes is too overwhelming to work part-time. And I have to give you one of those, it depends. It depends on your student, and it depends on their particular class load. Let's say, for example, that your student is very interested in pursuing QAMO, which is our quantitative analysis of markets and organizations major. It's fantastic, but it's very rigorous and it requires students to take calculus. Your students are all high performers and a lot of them will have already placed into calculus. So if you have a student who is taking calculus and they're taking a full load of other classes, it may not be a good idea for them to work part-time. So it's going to depend on their own workload as far as school goes. Do I think BUS 3995 makes it so you can't work part-time? No, with one caveat, you have to come to class. You can't pick work over class or work over one of the activities. We have a lot of local employers that are pretty understanding about school, but at some point your student, if they're working part-time, might have to just say, I have to be in class. I can't come in and cover this shift because I have to be in school. And if they're prepared for that and they don't have too heavy of a workload, they can work part-time. I paid my way through school, and I think actually everybody in our staff did. We all worked in college, and it's, you know, a bit of a juggling act.
Yeah, Bonita, the one thing I would say is we also have a lot of student jobs on campus here in the Eccles School. And so that is something that you can pick. You know, we bend around student schedules. Eccles ambassadors get paid. That's their student job. And anyone who's in business scholars this year will have an opportunity to apply. And then we're flexible around, you know, business career services has student workers, academic advising has student workers. And so that's something where the hours are flexible and you're right here. And so that might be a little bit easier than maybe having to go downtown or somewhere else for the job.
Will we have the Microsoft program again this year?
Yeah, we also have education at work, and that's something that they can find out about when they get here, and you get paid and you get scholarship money for that. And so we have a partnership with Microsoft, and our students run their call center, and so it's also a really great way to pay for school, and they have flexible hours there as well.
Hey, Andrea, can I just say really quick to tag teaming on Bonita? I would just say, also as a professor, I'm in the finance department, but this goes for any professors. If your student is experiencing challenges, professors are human and they want to help students. The hard part always is when we post a grade and then they come and say, oh, well, I was dealing with this. Much better to be proactive and come and talk to your professors and your TAs all along the way. So if you can just encourage your students to be involved and to get to know people and to let us know if they're experiencing issues or challenges, we're much more able to work with them than after the fact.
So awesome, thanks. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We told you that we would keep you till 5:30 and we're almost there. I just have two more things to cover. One is what to expect tomorrow. So orientation is tomorrow. We, as you have noticed, do not gather in large groups. What we're doing is focusing in our small classes. And so each cohort has sections. So either 5 sections or 4 sections. Each of the sections, we have a classroom that can accommodate everybody in person. But we can't accommodate everybody. And so for orientation tomorrow, there will be I think it's about an hour and 10 minute video that has all the information. We covered a lot of it today. And so it's basically the same thing we covered today with some intros and things like that, that your students will have an opportunity to watch. The in-person orientation is them meeting with their ambassador. Each ambassador has between 12 and 15 students assigned to them. And so that's a group, that's the beginning of them getting to know their cohort, is meeting with their ambassador. And so they each have a time slot for that. We know that a lot of students just moved into housing. They had to take the COVID-19 test. They were asked to quarantine. So we also have lots of students that are coming who aren't living on campus, who weren't asked to take a COVID test or quarantine. And so what the guidance we've been giving is that we do not require a COVID-19 test to come meet with your ambassador and come to orientation. You will be in a large room with 13 people who can stand 6 feet apart from each other with the mask. But if you aren't comfortable coming there, then the information is online, and then you can meet with your ambassador the first day of class. We're going to give them their backpacks and t-shirts and things tomorrow. You can pick that up from your ambassador or the business scholars office next week sometime. We also have some fun things. We've got some treats planned and things like that, but we're being very careful about making sure that we're following the guidelines of the university, which is to keep people safe with masks 6 feet distance. And then the other thing that I saw is that a lot of the parents have said, hey, how do I find out? How do I get more information? So we sent an email to the email address that was given in the application for when they applied for school. That's the information that we have for parents. I know it's super frustrating to be a parent of a freshman because you're used to getting all the emails, and then all of a sudden all communication goes through your child. And there's actual federal laws that we talked about, FERPA, that require it that way. And so our communication from here on out is really going through your child. But there's so many resources that are available from the university that will help you stay informed generally. So I'm going to give you a couple of places to go. So for the Eccles School, we've created the eccles.link/fall2020. We will have an eccles.link/spring2021 where we're aggregating all this information in one place. It has what's happening, where I sign up for things, all in one place. And then it has what we call FAQs, which are frequently asked questions. And as we get questions, we answer them, but we also type out the answer and put it on the FAQ so that it's there for anybody who wants to get that information. You do not have to be a student to go on to eccles.utah.edu or eccles.link/fall2020. The university has put together a website as well. We had some earlier questions about COVID and testing and contact tracing and all those types of things. That we get guidance for all of that from the university. They have a website called Return to Campus that has information and frequently asked questions there as well. So that's a great resource to go to kind of get in the loop on things. You can also ask your child to authorize you, give you a FERPA code to allow you access to the information, but we can't give any like grade information or things like that. We can't give it to you as a parent without getting FERPA authorization. So look into that if that's something that's important as well. So hopefully that's all the questions. Those are good places to go. We're always happy to answer any questions. If you go to the eccles.utah.edu site, there's a chat feature where you can ask questions in there if you don't see it in the FAQ. So we're trying to just be really open, transparent. I've been doing webinars all summer long for students and parents to answer whatever questions that we have. Now that school's in session, the questions are much more focused in classes. And so Canvas is a place that your student can go to get a ton of information. And so you can get that information from them as well. So all the trips, I'm seeing just one other question here. All the business scholars trips during the $39.95 class have all been paid for with your fees. So you don't have to pay extra for anything that we're doing in business BUS $39.95. If your child signs up for Eccles Global, any program you sign up for, you'll have the price right there. So you'll know before you sign up how much that one's going to cost. So want to make sure that we're really clear on that. So I think we've answered all the questions. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and also entrusting your children to us. We promise that we've got great things planned for them. You know, it's funny because I think one of the challenges is flexibility, adaptability, resilience, and we are being taught that right now. This morning we had a faculty call, and our faculty president, I think, brought up an extremely good point. She said, we are making history here. We are in a time period that will be written about for years to come. And so it's hard, and it's different, and it's ambiguous, and it's complex, but transparency, having support, with your students, having Eccles ambassadors and our staff and everyone in the Eccles school, we're here to help everybody get through that as easily as possible. And so we'll be communicating as much as we can, as quickly as we can, as we get information. And we're just grateful that you sent your children to come study at the University of Utah. And we'll do everything in our power to make sure they have a really fabulous freshman year. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you being on our webinar.